What's up, guys and gals of the movement world? It's Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi, coming in once again on behalf of Football Beyond the Stats in another movement skill short story this week for week 16 of the 2025 NFL season. And Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you and yours out there. It's a big week in the National Football League. There are a number of games on Thursday on Christmas Day, even if those games don't have quite as much shine as the NFL thought they were going to. But before we do that, we need to look at the best of week 16, this week that is behind us, as many teams under pressure, anxiety, the accumulation of fatigue, big game spots trying to clinch their place in the playoff run for January and February. So as we do that, we want to reward those players that are expressing dexterity down the stretch. And no player in the National Football League is probably displaying that as much as the player who got us kicked off on this 2025 NFL season in week 1 and week 2 in James Cook, running back of the Buffalo Bills. We're going to lean in on what it is that he did in Cleveland on Sunday, a little colder. Again, a Browns team that is trying to scrap their way to a number of victories, spoil a few people's plans here for the holidays, and they weren't exactly able to do exactly that against the Buffalo Bills. So without further ado, let's look at James Cook, number 4 here, brother of Dalvin Cook, former running back of the Minnesota Vikings, who I got to see quite a bit back in the late 2000 teens. So as we watch James Cook do his thing, again, you could rewind back to week 1 and week 2 and see the additional layers, the nuances of James Cook in his movement skill and what he does. One more time through here, 100% speed before we go at 50%. And then we got 3 activities for you today, coaches and skill acquisition specialists, what we might be able to do to channel this type of movement behavior. So really good stuff here from James Cook. Obviously, as you could tell, that's obviously the Captain Obvious type of moment here. But the Browns already up 7-0 halfway through the first quarter. And James Cook then puts the Buffalo Bills on his back and really did that throughout the course of Sunday's game quite a bit. There's a number of things that I really want to look at and really kind of revel at from James Cook, because one thing that we see from him this season that maybe we didn't see as much of in previous seasons is this highly attuned, intentional nature. And when I say attuned, guys and gals, if you haven't been here before, all that really means is sensitivity to the most useful and relevant informational variables that are going to specify one's opportunities to act, aka their affordances. So a sensitivity to picking up the specific information sources, the most useful, the most relevant ones that are going to tell someone as to how they should couple their movement actions. And I want to look at this first moment here, this first local movement problem of this play, and really kind of see what it is that James Cook might be seeing here as well, if I could get my arrow out. So we've got a couple of things that he is gleaning in on, right? And he's got in this, let me just draw this out for you, okay? Because this will be really relevant later on when we talk about what we might be able to do here, okay? If I'm just drawing kind of this workspace size, and this is probably, just kind of arbitrary, but it'll make some sense when I show you some of the things that we might look at, say from Enhancing Skill in American Football, my book there from 2025 from earlier this fall. But I think we're going to see this traffic navigation. Years and years ago, I talked about guys like Nick Chubb and their attunement in these tight, congested traffic situations. We could look at a Jonathan Taylor, who's another exemplar of that here in today's NFL. A Bijan Robinson, who does it a little differently just through adaptability. But James Cook, very in a Nick Chubb type of fashion, moves at this ownership speed until he has to hit the gas pedal. But he moves at this ownership speed sort of in a Le'Veon Bell type of fashion when he's in this congested traffic, so he can pick up information sources such as here and here It's a 1v2 essentially with a lot of other passive traffic that is obviously active because any one of these Brown defenders could obviously take him down, right? But I just sort of want to set the tone and paint the canvas, if you will, so you can see some of the things that James Cook might be picking up. Let's advance it another step or two. And you see how he draws those two defenders in. Okay, hopefully you saw it. Let me get back here. Okay, watch these two defenders. I'm circling one, circling the other. Watch those two defenders and watch it in relation to James Cook. Remember, it's all in the relation. It's all in the relations. It's all in the interactions, right? The problem and solution dynamics flowing into one another where they have constant changing reciprocal and mutual relationships. James Cook pulls them in, pulls them right into one another, and just escapes, just disappears, just goes ghost mode, right? Really special stuff that on the surface just looks like two defenders not knowing where it is that they're supposed to go and getting out of position, right? All of a sudden he draws those two together. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this later on when we look at the practice activity designs. But I will often tell my running backs in these situations to educate their attention and intentions. Can you act in a way that forces both players to be put out of position? Can you act in a way that puts both players against one another? And that's essentially what James Cook does here before he goes and disappears. Really special stuff. And you see three Browns defenders essentially falling over themselves because of it. Okay. But again, we can rep this out, guys and gals, in a repetition without repetition fashion where they're changing their process of what they're perceiving, what they're intending to do, and ultimately how they're acting. Really special stuff from James Cook. Now we got James Cook in the open field, essentially a 1v1 as that Browns deep defender, that deep safety enters the mix. We look at that same type of space of a tunnel. Okay. But, and I often do this in this fashion, okay, either between the hashes, and usually we will do this between high school hashes because usually we're on a high school practice field with my NFL guys as opposed to an NFL hashes because this is pretty tight, right? Like there's a pretty tight tunnel here. NFL hashes obviously being a little tighter together. But even if we want to call it this workspace size, which is about where the high school or college hashes would be drawn, we'll usually do this 1v1, a live zigzag, and I'll show you this as well. I just wanted to draw the workspace size for you guys and then watch James Cook in sort of a Barry Sanders against the New England Patriots type of fashion. We're going to see James Cook, Cleveland Browns type of fashion right there. Really special stuff in the open field when he's making it look in a very deceptive fashion like he's going where? Obviously, to his left, to the wider side of the field. So it requires this dude to go here and then ultimately try to cut that angle to stay with him. But at this moment, and especially with this amount of interpersonal distance and this amount of space, both to the right and to the left of this defender, James Cook has this dude on a string. And that's exactly what we're going to see here as he gives that look. He gets him turned. And look at how number 33 is turned right now, because this is highly informative to us. Once James Cook gets him turned in that way, then he's just going to cut this angle back to the back hip of this defender. Again, specifying information, useful, relevant informational variables, and it's why opposed work is really the only way to channel and facilitate this type of movement behavior from our ball carriers or for our ball carriers. A connection to the information that is going to be most specifying that would inform us as to how we can act, aka what affordances are out there. Then he drives that foot into the ground and just turns on it in a curved linear fashion. Once he does and 33 turns back around, he realizes he's got 9 there. And this one is one that really he's got no options right? He knows that there's a chaser coming from behind. He knows that, I think he knows that there's a buddy coming from behind. If he doesn't, he can probably pick him up in his periphery right here. This guy, number 33, is a very little threat at this moment because he's trying to do a curved linear turning action of his own. And so he uses this to be formless and shapeless and to flow like water. James Cook, watch him here. He knows he's got to go in him, and he just goes through the hands in the outstretched arms. He looks back at this cat right here, James Cook, as we saw in week 1 and week 2, and we saw across the course of the season. Highly attuned, but that attunement comes from constant scanning and wider information pickup. He goes and picks up information. Where is the threat from 33? It's not really there. He's going to be able to run away from him. Now he gets into a 2v1 with a lot of space again, from the outside hashes all the way to the sidelines with this interaction down here and this attunement to the blocker. And he just lets him take him where it is that he wants to go. Hopefully that makes some sense, right? Let's get back a little bit here. And he looks to this interaction, right? And he sees this interaction and he connects to it. And this is the stuff, guys and gals, that when we watch as movement and skill acquisition aficionados, we don't want to miss this forest through the trees. This is the finger pointing away to the moon, and this is the two connected to one another. He's not just taking in information about 7 now. He's got a lot of information that he could be picking up right now. He's got this back behind, right? And he's ultimately got what lies beyond. We know nothing lies beyond because we've reached the 3rd level and beyond of the defense, right? And so he knows, he being James Cook, knows that if he's able to be attuned and sensitive to this guy and how they are interacting, attunement to a blocker and the defender, right? It's the two connected as one, is a blocker, tackler, dyad. And he just stays connected with it, is able to move at ownership speed all the way to pay dirt. Let's watch it again here, slow motion, and you can sort of see how he goes with this and how he goes with the blocking attempt. And that becomes highly specifying for him. All kinds of affordances to act here, an entire landscape. You just have to choose the right one that is going to allow you to find your way towards your intentional goal, the direction of your goal, which is get the most amount of yards. And ultimately, if you're a ball carrier in space, score, right? If the opportunity presents itself. But en route to doing that, you got to solve a whole heck of a lot of problems. Let's watch it now at slow motion speed from this other view and vantage point. You can see what he's looking at, when he's looking at it, and what information he might be picking up, and how it does channel exactly how he's acting. Okay? Really special stuff. Let's see it again at that from that viewer vantage point if we could, just as I'm continuing to talk over it. This specifying information, guys and gals, the only way to get that and the only way to get that connection and close coupling to it is to immerse yourself within it. And to immerse yourself within repetition without repetition, where we're able to change the process of solving that problem again and again by changing the degrees of freedom and how it's organized together. Okay? So as I stop that share and go to share another, let's look at some of the things that we might be able to do to help facilitate that. The first one that we do from the book here, Enhancing Skill in American Football, is open field traffic navigation, or traffic navigation in a tunnel. Usually these defenders, well, obviously ball carrier here, he can get in any number of ways. He can get in on a handoff. He can already have the ball in hand. He could get the ball, turn and move into it. Any number of ways that we want him to get into that space. We start with these guys being passive, because usually we will do this in what would represent sort of our indie period, right? And you can easily do this if you're a position coach, as opposed to doing cuts around bags and moving in traffic or around slalom poles, bags, cones, or the like. Just put living human bodies there. And like what we saw from James Cook, you can start to manipulate where those other guys are moving based on where you're moving and how you're moving. And then how you're moving will be channeled from how those other guys are moving. Hopefully that makes some sense. It should be intuitively obvious, but it seems like so many from the developmental to high school to college to NFL level can't figure this out. So I'm trying to harp on it and hammer it home. Open field, traffic navigation gets a player awfully attuned and sensitive. You just move the position of these players, where their initial conditions are, where they're starting, how they're intending to move, if they're going to move and attack, not just side to side, but also forward, okay, or backward. Hopefully that makes some sense, right? Like what I'm saying here, guys and gals, is it doesn't have to be just where the arrows are drawn. We can make them active and they could attack these angles once the activity begins, okay? Or if this dude comes here and then back through, these guys can chase, right? A lot of different ways that you can change this traffic navigation in a tunnel. And you can see I have it drawn here on the high school hashes, but again, it can be any workspace size that you desire. Typically, we are doing it hashes to 10 yards as it's drawn. But we adjust this repetition to repetition or set to set, at least at bare minimum. So the workspace size is always changing also, which changes the amount of space that's available there. We might change the amount of players that are in the space. We might change the style of the player that's in the space. Hopefully you get the idea there. Moving from one to another, we go to a live zigzag now. And again, it doesn't have to be just how it's drawn. This is a lower complexity activity, but we can get players awfully sensitive and attuned to how others are moving. So what we might do is, even though this defender is right here, as you can see him, right? I just drew my X over my initial X from the book, right? But we can put him in any number of places, right? Or obviously right side, left side, it doesn't matter. We start this out, no two reps the same. That player just can't start in the same place, that player being the defender, or players can't start in the same place 2 reps in a row. And now this is a pretty big space, as I mentioned earlier and tried to draw out for you, but that gets that offensive player one-on-one in space. Let's say it's here in here. Well, let's actually draw it like it would be like it happened in the play, right? So imagine James Cook going this way, and this player, who before was number 33, if that's right? I think it was 33. He's got to run at that angle that he did in the play. Or we can move them from a different place. And then obviously, as this continues to unfold, this guy will follow. Hopefully that makes some sense, right? You can see how it's drawn. It unfolds pretty similar to the way that it just did. But we can get the player, and what it just did being in the film, right? Like from the play. But we can get both players, guys and gals. It's not just about James Cook, even though he's the feature of this movement skill short story. It's about both players on this reciprocal dance to become more attuned and sensitive to speeds, angles, changes of direction, deception, space to the left and to the right, interpersonal distances, what lies beyond. You kind of see where I'm going with this. Give the players a lot of goes with this type of exposure, and before you know it, both sides will become more attuned and sensitive. Speaking of attunement, last one here, that third local movement problem that played out for James Cook, attunement to a blocker in space. So it's a 2v1. We do this a lot, lower complexity to higher complexity, and we allow this to be repped in the same way. Now, this is in between the hashes, thinking of at like a second to third level type of interaction where running back has broken through the first to the second level, and there's either a tight end or an offensive lineman or a wide receiver or something of that nature getting out into the space. But we can do this, as we saw with James Cook, attunement to a blocker. We can do this over in this space, right? So think about it in this way. We can do it anywhere we want to with any workspace that we desire. And then even though in this drawing here from the book, again, Enhancing Skill in American Football, there's my cheap plug yet again, because that's what I do. We need to look at what might be there. So let's use a star here to designate the offensive player, right? And we got another offensive player maybe moving into space here. Let's get our X out, okay? We got a blocker, and he's trying to go and interact with said offensive blocker, blocker and defender, right? And this guy can go with this one depending on where this one is trying to go, right? So getting attuned and sensitive to how our blockers are positioned, what our interpersonal distance is to them, how their body orientation will begin to inform us as to where they're taking this defender, right? This defender, where they're taking that guy and how that guy, that defender is behaving. Guys and gals, it's not as hard as we make it out to be. We just got to give these players on both sides of the coin more goes, more exposure, more immersion, not just in April and May and June, not just in training camp for a 3-week period of time, but throughout the course of the NFL season or our competitive season. Really easy to do with relatively low complexity, as we saw from each activity today. It becomes inexcusable that we cannot continue to fine tune how players are able to solve problems and their attuned, intentional, and adaptable nature of their perceptions, cognitions, and actions, and their overall movement problem-solving capabilities. Nonetheless, really special stuff from James Cook. I love watching him here in this 2025 season, all the way from week 1 and week 2 to now this week in week 16. I'm sure in a couple of weeks here, he might find ourselves on our own movement team. It all depends on if he'll be first, second, or third team. We will see about that, and you guys will have to wait and see also. So again, I want to wish you and yours a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. Thank you for coming along for the ride on this 2025 season as we carry it on here down the home stretch, just like we see teams doing. I hope you guys are enjoying these videos. If you do, hit thumbs up, hit subscribe, share it on your platforms and with your people. I'd certainly appreciate it. I appreciate each one of you. I'm the Movement Miyagi, Sean Mishka, and this is another Movement Skill short story of Football Beyond the Stats. I'll talk to y'all next time.